Mack Brown is fired by North Carolina.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On ACC. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse, filling in for Alex Dono, the host of Locked On Canes. And joining me today, obviously, is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive tackle and the host of Locked On Wolfpack. And on today's show, we are talking about the firing of head coach Mack Brown over at North Carolina, plus how many ACC teams are going to be in the college football playoff this season, and how can the ACC maximize the amount of teams that get in, plus our final thoughts on week 13, and we award our players of the week. Now, before we get to all of that, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So the big news this afternoon, Mack Brown fired by North Carolina. I see that Kenton Gibbs is in a suit and tie. It appears that he's going to be interviewing for the North Carolina job, which is now open. So shout out to Kenton. Congratulations. We totally understand here at Locked On ACC that I understand the greener pastures that is being a head coach at North Carolina. But in all seriousness, Kenton, what do you make of this firing?
Well, first things first, Jackson, they don't got enough money to make me coach you. And say, I don't got enough. You know what I mean? In the words of Kendrick Lamar, it's not enough, okay?
They don't have enough?
They don't have enough. They don't have
enough.
Oh,
everyone has a price.
Hey, look, and my price is very high. It's very, very high to go over there to that school, and I refer to as the Dirty Foot Club. But, Jackson, some people would say I'm dressed to interview. Some people say I'm dressed for a funeral. Because I'm devastated, Jackson. I'm so disappointed by this. Mack Brown was a man with a vision, a man with a heart after the play. He's a coach that I wanted to see there. I wanted at least 5 more years of Mack Brown. Okay? And here's the thing. Sometimes people get out of line and forget who they are and just where they are in the world. Okay? North Carolina has gone to 6 straight bowl games under Mack Brown, right? Do you know how many times they have ever done that in program history?
Not often. Maybe under the first time under Mack Brown.
Correct. You're correct, Jackson. First time under Mack Brown. And so I look at this and I say, as much as I joke about loving Mack Brown being there because NC State would beat up on him, I think that this is one of those firings where teams forget where they are and everybody imagines we're going to hire our Signetti. The next hire is going to be our Signetti. And people forget you could go through what Nebraska has gone through after Pelini. You could be a team that, I'm sorry to tell you, you are just perpetually on the cusp, never quite that team. And you could tell yourself, well, we'll never know if we keep around mediocrity. That's fair. I'm not disagreeing with you. You are putting yourself in position to potentially get a better hire. You're also putting yourself in a position to get a lot worse. That is, both things are true. Both things. Everybody said, getting rid of Jimbo was going to solve it all for Florida State. They were going to be all right after getting rid of Jimbo.
It looked like after last season they were going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They got their highest of highs, and then they came back down to earth and got their lowest of lows. But you get my point. I really and truly look at this situation, and I say Mack Brown is the type, and because of how everything went down with Boeheim and Syracuse, sometimes when a guy is a lifer, you got to let him carry on a little too long. You got to, he's supposed to be out. But
the Boeheim, I get the Boeheim comparison, a little bit different, but with Boeheim.
I agree.
With Boeheim, when he was kind of fired via retirement, they kind of said to him, because it was, the reporting of that was very weird. It was like, he's been fired. And then it was like, no, he actually retired, which leads me to believe that they were going to fire him if he didn't retire. Having said that, let's relate it back to Fran Brown here, or not Fran Brown, Mack Brown. There's only one Brown left. There's only one Brown left in the ACC. He's the wing. He has the most wins in North Carolina history. 2 stints, by the way, 88 to 97, 2019 to 2024, obviously. 2005 national championship with Texas. It's kind of weird how this whole situation unfolded because he said to the university he wanted to come back. And the university's like, nope, you're not coming back. You're not coming back, Mack Brown. And they're going to let him coach the final game of the regular season.
Again, a lot of these folks.
That's so weird. I mean, you're the host of Locked On Wolfpack. I mean, obviously the two schools are playing this Saturday. I mean, that you want to talk about a dead man walking. Yeah. I mean, we're going to witness that on Saturday. Mack Brown is literally going to be a dead man walking.
I would caution Wolfpack Nation and anybody who wants to bet on the Wolfpack because of this firing of this. There is rarely ever a group of players as motivated as a group of players who feel like their guy, the guy who bought them in, the guy who believed in them, the guy who said, not only are you a Division I player, you're an ACC player. Come on to us. There is no more fired up team than a team who believes that guy has been fired unfairly. And this is what I mean by, the Boeheim situation and the Brown situation, they're brothers and sisters, they're siblings, not twins, right? It's not identical one for one, but it's very closely related because had they sent him out to passion that way of, hey, listen, Mac, just announce that you're retiring. We will not bring you back next year, but just announce that you're retiring. That would have been a very different situation than the administration going, hey, listen, dude, you're fired. We're telling everybody you're fired. It is what it is. What you going to do about it? Because now that galvanizes players to say, you know what, to hell with it. If these are Mack Brown's last two games ever, what better way to go out than beating the Wolfpack that he hates and that he knows hates him, and then winning a bowl game? This is a team that will, you talk about dead man walking. It's different when the players are like, about a guy.
They're gonna play for the dead man.
Exactly. They're gonna play. They're gonna give everything they got for that dead man. It may be weekend at Bernie's, but damn it, they love Bernie. They love Uncle Bernie like it's the Bernie Mac show. Okay, that's what's happening here. So, in all seriousness, I think that this situation wasn't handled the best, especially with this firing coming a week after him saying, "I sit with the kids, and that's when I want to stay around." And That this conversation, if you were going to fire him, should have been had then. Like what? How did the Boston College game?
I don't understand the timing now. I guess
and that's what I'm saying.
Why is it right now?
I agree. I agree.
Why not wait another week? And it's unclear, by the way, you mentioned the bowl game. The reporting out there is that they don't know if he's going to coach the bowl game or not.
Oh, come on. Come on, man. Come on. That's classic.
Why didn't they just wait till after the season to fire him? That's all they had to do. Yeah, I know, I'm sure they gave him the option to be like, hey, if you announce that you're stepping down after the season, like we'll take it that way because we're not going to bring you back. I think they understand it from that standpoint, but how do you let it leak right now?
Even if the most sympathetic I could be to the University of North Carolina situation is if they told him, hey, regardless of what happens in these last X amount of games, you're not coming back. And then he comes out with that statement. And even then, I'm not sure that I'm going to tell everyone he's fired. Even then, how rosters or how coaches sometimes put out a statement, hey, this player's no longer on the team, right? Instead of saying they're kicked off or they're gone, you don't know whether or not the player took a leave or whatever.
They'll sometimes say dismissal.
Right, every now and then.
Like the nice way of saying you're kicked out.
Right. But sometimes they're like, hey, we're not going to say exactly what it is because we like this kid. We want him to get his act together. He just couldn't. I feel like this is one of those moments where they could have did the same thing. Hey, Mack Brown is stepping down. And that's it. And let him come out and say, I'm not stepping down. They're firing me. And you live with that. But to me, don't fire. And again, my question is this, Jackson. What about that Boston College game made that much of a difference to you to where the situation changed to where you had to do this?
I don't know. Honestly, I mean, they could have done it after the James Madison loss if that makes you feel better.
And that would have made sense. And
after they gave up 70 points to JMU, I mean,
I would have understood that. If you give up 70 to JMU and you're like, hey, you're gone, I'm not mad at you. Then I'm sympathetic and I'm understanding. But post that JMU game, if you tell anybody, hey, Kenton, a team is in the ACC, they're going to lose by such a margin that if James Madison did not score in the second half, they still would have won the football game to what happened. If you tell me after that game that team is going to make a bowl game in a Power 4 conference, I call you a liar. I say, oh, this is funny. This is jokes. They found a way to do it, and you still fired the man. Again, if you fire him then, that's a fireable offense. Hey, get him out the paint.
Oh, yeah.
But waiting till now, you've put yourself behind the 8 ball in recruiting. You've put yourself behind the 8 ball in terms of the coaching search. You've put yourself behind the 8 ball in so many regards. And I get that UNC is not as bad of a job as many people make it out to be. I get that. I know it's a pretty good job, actually, in the grand scheme of college football. But with that in mind, do you think that won't be in some folks' heads in terms of, is this a long-term place I can stay or not, based on the way that this was handled for a UNC legend?
The best case, I mean, we can go over coaching candidates, at least that On3 has in a moment here, but I guess the way you would use it is almost like a stepping stone stool, where if you go to North Carolina and you have unprecedented success, you win like 4 straight years of 10+ games, well, then you can parlay that job into, say, if an Alabama opens up or a Georgia or something like that. So
I wholeheartedly agree.
But here's the thing, Kenton. That's like most schools in Division I college football. There's like very few where it's like you drop everything that you're doing. So take that for what it's worth. As far as coaching candidates, I saw a few that were listed on On3. Arthur Smith was one that's floated out there, former Falcons coach, currently with the Steelers. What do you think of him? Dan Mullen, I think, would be a solid hire in my opinion. The other one that was very confusing that they had listed was the current SMU head coach, Rhett Lashley. That one made no sense to me.
Folks don't understand how deep that money goes in SMU, and it's the perception that this is an American athletic conference team. Do y'all not understand?
Now.
No, I'm saying that's the perception, because remember, even ESPN, when they had Rhett on, what did they put up as the graphic?
AAC.
So, and these people are making a lot more than you and me to do this thing, Jackson. That's just the reality. So that's the perception. But do people not realize that team is not taking a dime of ACC money for years? For years. And they were like, hey, we got the boosters. We got the facilities we need to be able to do what we do, how we do it.
This year. It doesn't make sense for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, he just signed an extension.
Absolutely.
Through 2030. So,
and you got to pay for that buyout. When you buy the new coach, you've got to buy him out of that old school.
There you go. And I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah.
But I've seen coaches leave while under contract. So let's go to a different point, which is that why the heck would he move from SMU to UNC? Like, he's doing well at UNC. UNC is a good job. It is not one of those jobs where you drop everything that you're doing and you take that job. So
I agree.
I don't see why Rhett Lashley would do it. If North Carolina fans disagree with me, feel free to let us know in the comment section. But the big news this afternoon is that North Carolina legendary head coach, I should say, Mack Brown, has been fired by the university this afternoon. I'm Jackson Holzer, and that's Kenton Gibbs. Coming up, we are going to talk about maximizing ACC playoff teams. I know we're talking a lot about football here, but I just want to let you all know that basketball season is now in full swing. Whether it's NBA, college, going to ACC basketball games, they're always exciting, right? And the way I get tickets for games is by using Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And my favorite feature is the curated deals, because curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, theater, etc., whatever you want with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEG for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Last week, there was a podcast on this channel. I wasn't hosting it, okay? That was Alex Dono with Locked On Canes. He was the host, and he'll be back, I believe, tomorrow, okay? So you can say your farewell wishes in the comment section at the end of this podcast. But there was a podcast here about, hey, If the ACC is not careful, they might have no playoff teams. Uh-oh. Well, now we've arrived at the other extreme, Kenton, because the AP poll has 3 teams in the top 12. So, Kenton, what are your thoughts? And can the ACC potentially get 3 teams in the college football playoff? What do you think?
They absolutely should. The ACC absolutely should have 3 teams in. Everybody is jumping and screaming and shouting about this South Carolina team. If they find a way, if they get a win against Clemson, we should seriously talk about them in the playoff. Well, why would Clemson not get that same look with a better record and a head-to-head win? Why would Clemson not get that same love and consideration in that situation? I would love for somebody to explain it to me like I'm 12. Hey, this is why South Carolina deserves that consideration and Clemson doesn't, despite this being both of their last game of the regular season and neither team making their conference championship. So honestly, this is both of their last game.
Hold on, unless Miami loses.
Unless Miami loses, of course. Unless Miami loses. This is going to be most likely their last game in terms of what we're looking at for before the playoff. What reason could you come up with that, South Carolina's resume is that much more impressive, mind you, with a head-to-head loss? So Clemson should absolutely be considered to be in. And again, if you switch conferences and say you have 2 one-loss teams, one of your one-loss teams lost to a team that was undefeated up until week 10 or 11. Another one of your one-loss teams has the number 1 offense in America and a guy that should be in the Heisman conversation, him not being in the Heisman conversation and not being the Heisman front runner. I get him not being the front runner, but not being in the conversation in a meaningful way.
If you're talking about Cam Ward, the Maxwell Award watch list or finalist came out, and he wasn't listed on there. They had Dylan Gabriel from Oregon on there instead, which made no sense.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. If you look at this Miami team and you talk about what Cam Ward has done, and you look at the Oregon team and talk about what Dylan Gabriel has done, no disrespect to Dylan Gabriel. He is a bad man. Cam Ward is more than just the straw that stirs the drink. He is the cup. He is the ice cubes. He's the salt around the rim. Hell, he's the tequila in the thing as well. So I look at this situation. I say to myself, there's a lot of disrespect being lobbed towards the ACC, despite the fact that Cam Ward exceeds his numbers at every single point. So, I look at this thing and I say, if there was another conference, there would be no doubt about 3. With a 2-loss team and 2 one-loss teams, one of them whose one loss came to a team that was undefeated late, you're just not going to see it. But here we are. We're the ACC. It just means less, apparently. So there's less respect.
So the way I look at it for this weekend, there are a few things that really need to happen for the ACC. Okay. And I'm honestly very conflicted because I'm the Locked On Syracuse host. I am a Syracuse alum. I'm a Syracuse fan. And in the best interest, I want Syracuse to win, but in the best interest of the ACC, they need Miami to win.
Absolutely.
It's very, very conflicting right now.
Yeah.
I think I lean more towards I want Syracuse. But here's the idea, all right? This weekend, you need Miami to win. They get to the ACC title game. They're 11-1. They're pretty much a lock at that point. You need SMU to win because, yes, SMU is going to play for the ACC championship.
Yeah.
But if they lose, that's their second loss. And if they get that third loss, they're done. They're not going to take a 3-loss SMU.
Right.
So you need SMU to win this week. So the worst they can do is have 2 losses. And then you got Clemson. Clemson at, 9-2 right now? They're playing South Carolina. If they win that game, not only do they bolster their chances of making the playoff, but they eliminate South Carolina. Yes. South Carolina's done. They would have 4 losses. They're out. I hope the committee is not going to take a 4-loss SEC team. I don't think they will. It's okay. That's what needs to happen this weekend. And then going forward, here's my thought on this for the ACC title game. We're looking really far down the line here. I think it might be in the best interest if SMU wins it. I think the committee would be more likely to give an at-large bid to Miami simply because of the brand name Miami.
I agree.
Than they would SMU. Because SMU, you just got to the ACC. Oh, you're not very good. You lost to Miami in the ACC. I think it's in the best case of this, the best thing to happen in the conference is SMU runs the table. They get the auto bid. They take Miami, and hopefully Clemson sneaks in at 10-2. That's the way I look at it. That's the path to getting 3 teams in the college football playoff.
Here's the thing, right? In a perfect world where we actually have real let me not say that. In a perfect world where we have real ball knowers watching this thing and measuring it out, it doesn't take a one specific scenario to see 2 1-loss teams and 1 2-loss team from a Power 4 conference get into the college football playoff. In a good world, in a just and fair world. Unfortunately, a fair is where you go to eat bad food that'll kill you and get on terrible rides that will kill you. So the reality of what we're sitting and looking at is the situation that you described is the only situation where we get 3 teams in. You have to Clemson, and I'll take it a step further. Clemson cannot beat South Carolina. They have to throttle those boys. I don't think a 3-point win is enough. I don't think a 1 point. I don't think a 1 point win. They would also,
I think, need help outside. I mean, I think Indiana needs to lose to Purdue because they don't want to put in Indiana. But if Indiana's 11-1, I don't think they have a choice.
11-1, 1 loss to Ohio State. Mind you, Ohio State was scoring with 37 seconds left on the clock when they very easily could have, hey, we're going to go ahead and nail this out. But again, when you look at Indiana and say, oh, they got blew out when they played the real team, Texas against Georgia, ring a bell, anybody? Or is that just, again, it just means less everywhere in the country, not just in the ACC.
But what I'm saying is that if Indiana loses this week to Purdue, they're 10-2. And if Clemson wins, they're 10-2. And the committee is going to take Clemson over them.
I get you. The brand bias will absolutely lean in Clemson's favor. Absolutely. If we're looking at brand bias right now, is there a world where we could see, let's say, a Florida State beat the defending national champion and the national runner-up, go undefeated, save for 1 game against the number 2 team in the nation, and people consider them to not be in the top 5? No. Despite what you think about the ACC, that brand bias of, hey, we know the spear, it would absolutely rear its head. So I agree with what you're saying, Jackson. I'm just saying it should not be that way. But if ifs and buts were berries and nuts, squirrels would never starve. Here we are in the real world where the exact situation you laid out is exactly as it has to happen. But I would throw in the caveat that Clemson has to dominate South Carolina. If Clemson dominates South Carolina, Miami and SMU is the conference championship, and SMU wins a close football game, I think that's your only path to getting in 3 from the ACC. Because I think that a 2-loss Miami, one of those losses being extremely close, really both of those losses being one possession.
Be close, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Georgia Tech is not. I mean, nobody cares about Georgia Tech outside of the ACC, but I'll spoil it right now for those that may be watching outside of the ACC. Georgia Tech is a good football team.
They are.
They are a good football team.
Physical as hell. They'll beat you up.
But the committee members are not going to see it that way. See, they'll look at Georgia Tech and they'll think that they're Vanderbilt, except there's a team that actually lost to Vanderbilt.
No, they'll think they're Oklahoma. Oh, except there's a team that lost to Oklahoma too, isn't there? Well,
so funny.
They'll think they're Auburn. Why do we keep running into all these teams that these top teams have lost to? But you get the point. You seriously get the point. Again, in a perfect world, I don't think that there's a debate as to whether or not 3 get in. In the world we live in, we are having to have a very narrow path to the 3. Because like you said, if Miami beats SMU, if Miami throttles SMU, SMU's done. They're cooked, rightly or wrongly.
Oh, yeah, they're done.
They're not getting a shot. If Clemson beats South Carolina last second field goal, nobody's going to give them respect. Nobody's going to say, oh, you beat them.
They would need a lot of help. I mean, they would also need Texas A&M to lose to Texas, and they would need Indiana to lose to Purdue.
But my question is, why would they need, to me, Texas A&M and Texas should be a play-in game, basically, because who the hell has Texas beat? Who have they beat? So if you come in and we're talking about 2 losses now, that should be a very different scenario. Hey, you lost every game you played against the ranked opponent. We got to get you out of there. But again, Jackson, this is what we talk about with the conference bias and the brand bias. Because again, what brand is bigger than Texas? Everything's bigger in Texas, and definitely the Longhorns.
Texas is one of those jobs where you kind of have to stop what you're doing and take that job.
Yeah,
that relates to the last segment. That's how big Texas is.
Absolutely. Texas is one of those, I don't give a damn where you are. if Fran Brown goes on to lead Syracuse back to the Ernie Davis days type of success, and all of a sudden the Texas calls.
I hope that Syracuse is in that predicament one day. That would be ideal. That would be perfect. Isn't that the goal? I mean, ideally, Fran Brown would stay, 30 years and lead Syracuse to 10 national titles and everything like that. But if you're telling me that they can have 5-6 years of tremendous success, which is like unprecedented since the 80s and the 50s with Syracuse, and then he leaves to go take a job at Texas,
I'm okay with that.
That's fine by me. I'll sign on the dotted line right now.
What did Brad Pitt say in Inglourious Basterds? You'll take that deal? I'll take that deal.
Yeah, you know what the alternative was, right? Having Dino Babers for 8 years and getting 1 10-win season, and that was about it. So I'll take a lot of success, and then he leaves for another job. But that's our discussion on the amount of conference teams, ACC teams, I should say, getting in the college football playoff. The good news, I don't think there's going to be 0. There's at least going to be 1, maybe 2, outside chance 3. Now, coming up, our last thoughts on Week 13. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Speaking of the game of the week in the ACC this Saturday, Miami trying to clinch a spot in the ACC title game. All they got to do is go up north and play the Syracuse Orange, who are currently 8-3. Miami is a 10.5-point road favorite. What do you think of those odds? That is up for you to decide. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, our last thoughts on Week 13, our players of the week as well. Kenton, let's start off on offense, your offensive player of the week.
Yeah, so, there were a lot of guys I could look at and say, hey, you played a really good football game. You played a great game. But I think that there's only one guy. If you watched his game and you saw how he cooked up in this game, I think it's very hard to give it to anybody but Kevin Jennings. I mean, he absolutely destroyed Virginia. When I tell you, every time you thought, oh, he's about to get sacked, he pulls a little Houdini move, and all of a sudden he's free and finding an open man downfield. So I think that Kevin Jennings of SMU, again, everybody who knows me knows how much I love the Pony Express. I was so happy when they got in. Everybody said, oh, Ken, you can't be happy. The NC State approved this. Hey, we got SMU. I'm all right. I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with his performance.
I know I have bias here. I know. But can I read you Kyle McCord's numbers here?
Talk to me.
470 yards, completion percentage of nearly 80%.
You ain't wrong.
2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. I know I'm biased, but I mean, come on.
Hey, listen, I had to leave him for you. I had to leave him for you. If it was me and Dono, I would have took him. But it's your guy, so I had to let you get your guy. Especially with all the slander I've lobbied his way. I can't switch up and join the team now after a 470-yard performance. But he did. He played his tail off. He really did.
And I know people will say, well, it was against UConn. Well, Kevin Jennings did it against the mighty Virginia Cavaliers, and we're not talking about basketball right now on the podcast. They're not a very good football team. They're not. Cam Ward did his performance against Wake Forest, and the other contender, Fernando Mendoza, who had an excellent game against Stanford. So it's not like they all played against the juggernauts here. So I gave it to Kyle McCord for 470 and 2 touchdowns. Kenton, what about your defense?
Defense was a little bit tougher because I looked around the conference and I said there were a lot of guys who played some really good ball this week. And it's always tough to come up with like, hey, who was the most impactful guy? Who was the guy that showed up and showed out the most in a week where we're getting down to the nitty-gritty and we're seeing players ball out at a very, very, very high level. But there is one gentleman in particular. He has been doing it all year. I have given this young man love all year. He may have done one thing that has upset me, and that's get Mack Brown fired. Donovan Ezaraku, come on down, baby. Donnie is a pass rusher supreme. 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. He showed up and showed out big time this week, as he's been doing all year. Let's be very honest. He is one of the sack leaders in the ACC for a reason. He is relentless. He is quick twitch. He is surprisingly wiry strong, much stronger than this frame would imply. And I'll tell you, that get off, it's like he's Usain Bolt covering a ton of ground in a hurry out the blocks.
You know, he was also in contention for me as well. And spoiler to the audience here, me and Kenton, we did not consult each other on these lists. If there was going to be other names, I mean, we would have just doubled down on them, but we didn't. That's the good news here. I got Mish Powell over at Miami. I really gave it to him because of the play he made in the second quarter against Wake Forest. It's about midway through the quarter. Miami's up 10-7, and Wake Forest is driving. Yeah. They're driving. They're down by 3 points. They're well within field goal range. It looks like they're either going to tie or potentially take the lead. And you know, with Miami, they can kind of give you a little stare at times, right? They kind of can.
Absolutely.
And then comes Mish Powell, perfectly reading a wide receiver screen and taking it over 70 yards back to the house, put Miami up 17-7. The irony of it is that Wake Forest scored on the ensuing kick return. But in that moment, I knew for sure after that play, Miami's not going to slip up at least this week. They're not going to slip up this week. Now, maybe, hey, who knows about this? Who knows about Syracuse? Who knows, right? We never know about that one. But at least I knew they are not going to just have a home dud against Wake Forest. So Mish Powell gets it for me because he completely changed the game, made the most impactful play for Miami in their win over Wake Forest. Those are our players of the week. Last thoughts on week 13? Anything on your mind?
You know, again, I'm just very disappointed with the timing of this firing. And again, this isn't me joking about Mack Brown being a guy that's going to allow NC State to get more wins against UNC. I mean that from a very genuine standpoint. Why here? Why now? Why in this very moment, in the middle of rivalry week, do you announce, hey, by the way, before you play your most heated rival, your coach is going. So have fun with that. I think that's just a moment where you just look up and say, what a disappointment. And one more final thought here. There should be no way that the ACC is even debating. There's even a possibility of less than 2 in the playoff. There's not a world where you can tell me that 2 ACC teams have not earned the right to be there. It breaks down to a very circular logic of we believe you're the best in preseason, therefore you are the best in order to keep them out.
I told you this in the preseason. I told you on those squad episodes, those preseason rankings, they don't die. Kenton, they don't die.
Listen, I didn't disagree.
We think you're good. And unless you're Florida State and you are so absolutely terrible, it's like we can never get rid of that perception of oh, maybe they're just not that good. Or maybe they're much better than we thought they were. That's just how it is. I guess for my final thought, I kind of agree. I do agree with you on the Mack Brown. The timing of it is just really confusing. There's no sense for it to leak out on a Tuesday afternoon right before you're about to play your biggest rival. Makes no sense. And then you're going to have him coach. I find it weird, but I get it. I guess they're giving him the option to do it, which is cool. He's under contract for now. And I agree with you. There should be at least 2 ACC teams in, possibly 3. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. That is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive tackle, now the host of the Locked On Wolfpack. And guys, if you're tired of me, well, good news for you. Alex Dono, the host of Locked On Canes, he should be back tomorrow hosting this podcast. But it has been a pleasure filling in for Alex Dono. So thank you all for the support. And everyone, I will see you all for the ACC squad episode, which is coming out on Wednesday.